Hey everybody, Fight Club Hubs here. Welcome to another episode of Game Adaptations, where I look at movies, TV shows, and anything else that has pretty much been adapted from a video game. Last couple of episodes I've done cartoon adaptations and comic book adaptations of the Legend of Zelda franchise, and now we're going to get back into movies with one I am not quite excited for. Initially I was, but that died down with each trailer and each bit of information that kept coming out as the movie progressed. And that movie, It Came from the Desert. It Came from the Desert is a game that came out in the late 80s, initially for the Commodore Amiga, from a company called Cinemaware. Cinemaware is a company that was well known for making cinematic experiences in your video games. Some of their most notable games was Wings, Defender of the Crown series, and It Came from the Desert. Now the game It Came from the Desert is an homage to classic 1950s, 1960s science fiction giant creature films. You know, movies like Them, Colony of the Ants, Tarantula, Giant Mantis. Those fun films right there that explored the consequences of the atomic age. It Came from the Desert, which is an adventure game set in a small town with you as a detective going around solving these mysteries about what's going on in this little mining town that's in the middle of nowhere. The game had some interesting elements, like the combat starting off as kind of a pseudo first-person shooter element where you had to shoot the ants in the antenna, to an overhead run for your life from the giant ants attacking type of action sequence, to escaping from the hospitals, to just going around from location to location interviewing random people, including a professor who is called H.G. Wells. And just overall, it was a very fun game. It did get a sequel. I did not play much of the sequel, but it had next to nothing to do with the first game, with the exception of the fact that it took place in the same town. Now the movie, as I said, as I watched the initial announcement, I was excited. Like, oh, we're going to get a classic fun B-movie based on a game that was based on B-movies. This is going to be great. And then all the announcements of what they were doing came out, how it was going to be modern, and it was going to involve teenagers and motorcycles, and I saw the CG effects, and I was just like, oh god, they're turning this into a fucking Sci-Fi Channel B film. Oh. And I still have absolutely no expectations going into this. I'm hoping to be surprised that it's actually a good film. It's going to be fun. But my expectations do not exist for this film, so I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen. I'm not a fan of the horror films that have been coming out for these types of films in the last several years. You know, with the onslaught of shark films like Cyber Shark or Sharktopus or Sharknado. So I am not looking forward to seeing this. So let's go ahead and dive right in.
A few moments later.
Where do I begin with this film? For starters, it wasn't as bad as I expected it to be. But at the same time, it was not a good film by any stretch of the imagination. In terms of being connected to the video game, only two things happen. Well, three, I'm sorry. They have the movie start off with the opening monologue replicating the intro of the game itself. Spoken dialogue word for word.
Millions of years, yet witness to a biblical prophecy come true that one day the meek shall inherit the earth. Unchanged for millions of years, yet witness to a biblical prophecy come true that one day the meek shall inherit the earth.
They have two mentions whatsoever to the original game. One is the fact that they mentioned that halfway through the film, oh, there was a meteor that crashed into the town of Lizard's Breath back in the 50s. Then there was one of the lead characters, their cell phone goes off, and it is the music for the title screen of the game.
Is that it? Answer it! Get off! Lisa? Why's she calling?
And the final thing was that during the end credits, they show a ton of gameplay footage of the game itself during the entire end credits. But aside from that, nothing connected to the game at all, except for that there's giant ants. There is no detective, there is no professor, there is no city to be protected, there is no investigation work whatsoever. No, it's the whole movie in a nutshell. Here's the plot. So from this point on, spoilers. There's these two brothers, they're going out and having a party in the desert to celebrate the victory of one of the brothers' motocross race from like the prior week or something like that. And pretty much they wander off from their party and they find an old abandoned military base of some kind. And then they wander around, see an ant, freak out, and they manage to stumble across a room with a video from the doctor who is in charge of the lab explaining that the ants could not increase their population without the help of ethanol, to which one of the other lead characters mentions they need ethanol. We need to get back to the party. To which we cut back to the party, see the ants ravage all the teenagers everywhere, and then it just leads to kind of a confusing pace at that point on. Because once the ants attack the party, it's just, let's go here to find some weapons to kill the ants, and then it's, let's go back to the nest to rescue what survivors there are, and then it turns into aliens all of a sudden with, you know, breaking into the hive and destroying the hive full of eggs that are about to be hatched, and killing the queen that chases them down, and I'm actually left speechless because I don't know how to get my thoughts in line in order to properly convey what this film was supposed to do or try to do. I mean, it was enjoyable. Some of the dialogue choices throughout the film just really had my head scratching. Like there was a scene where the two brothers are at a cliff and the one older brother's just throwing beers down into the chasm, and then he decides to turn around and take a piss, and the younger brother's like, dude, really?
Philistine.
I've never been to Philadelphia or Palestine, dude.
Okay. The dialogue just throughout the whole film was just absolutely absurd. It was definitely in line with films like, you know, Robo-Shark, Sharktopus, and all those other, like, stupid B films that have been coming out the last 10, 15 years. Speaking of which, you know, I don't remember a single name of any of the characters because they just, I don't care for the characters. Outside of maybe one, which was the love interest, played by actress Vanessa Gracie, who only has like 6 films to her name, 2 of which was Leatherface and Robo-Shark. So she's already got experience in this type of genre of film. She was definitely not the worst actress. She was definitely not the best actress, but she was better than everybody in the film. The plot really just was all over the place, to be truthfully honest. Like, I mean, I gave you the synopsis of it, but some of the things that really, really just picked my head off was like from the beginning of the film. They had 2 intros. They start off with a bunch of, well, like 3 guys armed to the teeth running and shooting at something in the distance. I'm like, okay, so this film is off to a pretty fast start. They reveal the ants practically almost instantly within like 3 minutes of the film. And then after they eradicate the entire team, they cut to another scene where it's suddenly a couple of Hispanic guys coming in a truck and they're like, dude, we're here to get some brass and we're here to get some copper because it's pretty good money to make. And they wander into this like cave where they find all this brass shells from guns, and the one guy asks straight up like, dude, why is there so much ammo out here? And the guy's like, it's the desert. People shoot things all the time. I mean, like, Yeah, that's kind of true, but at the same time, he asked the valid question. Why is there so many bullets all over the place? So, and then they got attacked by ants. Like, they did a first-person viewpoint of an attack, which, if you ask me, that is how the film should have began. Not with military guys trying to escape and kill these ants as they try to run away. No, you want to set a good precedent for the film. That intro with the two Hispanic guys getting attacked while they're, really looking for, scrap, that is how you should begin your film. Like a slow reveal. Like when they did a top-down view of the ant attacking the dude as he runs to his truck, it was dark enough that you could barely see the silhouette of the ant coming at him. That was great right there. Outside, there was not much else memorable of the film. The music sticks out like a sore thumb for me, probably more than the rest of the movie did. Hey, kitty, how are you? This is Bruno, by the way. The music was all over the place. The opening scene that I just talked about earlier had a melodramatic, tone to it. Like, we were supposed to feel sorry for these guys who we just met. Like, we have nothing invested in these guys to feel sorry for their death. And yet, they're playing some kind of somber, sad, like aggressive music to make it feel like this is kind of a tragedy that was going on, even though I know nothing about these troops. Throughout the film, though, I was blasted with a ton of, cheap AFI and teen angst-ridden rock music. Thrown at me. The majority of the music, rock songs that were thrown at us was by a guy named Santa Cruz. I don't know who they are, but oh my gosh, there was so much rock music that was just all about the aggression and the angsty, rebellious teenage lifestyle, which I just this does not belong in this film. Another thing that really perplexed me was just they tried to be fancy with the cinematography in the desert. They spent an entire 5 minutes of panning of camera shots in the desert as these three guys are racing in their dirt bikes as they're trying to get to the camp. They're showing interesting viewpoints as the teenagers are exploring the abandoned facility where the ants came from. Yeah, that's about it. Nothing really stuck out as interesting as there was nothing that said, wow, that's a great shot right there. Oh, wow, that was a good viewpoint. It gave me a great image of what was going on. No, none of that. It was just And I would have to say now, we gotta talk about the special effects. Most importantly, we gotta talk about the ants. Good God, the ants. That is some of the worst CG I've ever seen used. That CG might have flown in the 1990s. No, not in 2017, which is when this film came out. The design of the ants was fine. The way they were animated, the way they were shaded, the way they had next to no shadows, shadow casting whatsoever. It was just so bad looking. Speaking of, the ants themselves, though, they tried to inject personality into the ants. They belch. They giggle. They can throw objects with extreme precision. For instance, there was 2 times one ant picked up a keg, and he launched that thing and hit some dude in the back of the head, point blank. And then there was another one where an ant picked up a truck and hurled it real far. And then, of course, the thing that really caught me off guard was in the facility when the trio of main characters were running away, one ant was bashing his head into the door trying to get in, and then all of a sudden, subtitles appeared saying, "Dude, stop it. My head hurts. That's what you get." I'm like, what? So now they're talking. Oh my goodness. And to top it all off, this film was just eh. It wasn't bad, it wasn't good, but it was just eh. I mean, I found some things I enjoyed it. I laughed at a couple of these bad jokes. I groaned a lot at the music. I groaned a lot at the plot. I groaned a lot at the characters. I mean, I wasn't offended, but I wasn't really entertained either. It was just eh. And that's the film's biggest crime. It was eh. And I really don't know where to go from there. I mean, when it came to the Doom movie, I was absolutely upset with what they did with that film. I felt like 2 hours of my time was really stolen because I felt like it could have been a good film with what went into the production of it, and it underwhelmed exponentially. It underdelivered like hardcore. This film, it had nothing to deliver. I didn't expect it to deliver me anything other than just, maybe some cheap laughs, some cheap effects, a subpar plot, if you can call it a plot. But I wasn't insulted at the end of the day, to be truthfully honest. It wasn't as bad of a film as I expected it to be. But it wasn't anywhere near being a good film. So I really have to say at the end, there's not much more for me to say. It was just an film. And you know what? Check it out if you want. I mean, I'm sure there's people out there who enjoy this style of film. My wife would probably love this film since she's, a fan of like all those stupid creature feature films. I mean, the last good, decent B film of that caliber to me, Eight-Legged Freaks or Lake Placid. I'm going to leave it at that. Since I wasn't too happy with how my Legend of Zelda TV series review came out, my next project will be another TV-based cartoon series adaptation. Stay tuned. Keep on gaming.